Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Shelf Life. This is Simran, and this is my podcast, Shelf Life. We talk about books, their philosophies, but most importantly, our personal relationship with a book. Welcome back. It's been 3 weeks of me being MIA, and I haven't really been active on social media either, so apologies for that. But I do have a valid explanation. I do have a valid reason for it, which I will let you guys in on in a little while. But yeah, I'm back now, and I promise it's not going to be really intense, long breaks with no explanation or no notice. It's not going to be that way anymore. I promise that I'll really manage my time better and sort of at least let you guys know that there's not going to be a Shelf Life episode this week or something of that sort. So that's for sure. That is my promise to you guys. And I get that. Even for me, it's been so easy to fall into sort of like a routine that I identify with now. It's just, when you start the week, you know exactly how it's going to go. So this is the day for shoot. This is the day you work on the content for the episode. This is the day that you edit the creatives, you do the editing of the shoot, of the episode. This is the day you release, you market, this, that. It just sort of became so routinized. And which is a great thing, because I like having routines. I like having like a list of things to do that day or that week and checking them off at the end of the day. That is my favorite thing to do. God, I love check boxes from the bottom of my heart. I don't even know how this set in, because honestly speaking, I don't know anybody who really was a fan of check boxes and routines and just itineraries that much. I mean, my mom isn't, and I don't think anybody else in my family is that way either. I think a lot of them are very, very spontaneous, for sure. I come from a family of very spontaneous people, but I don't know where that came from. But I also really, really appreciate spontaneity, obviously, and just doing things randomly for no reason and not really having an explanation for it or feeling like you need to give an explanation or prove anything. I really like that as well. I appreciate that. But more or less, it's routines for me, and it's to-do lists and check boxes and lists and planners. God, I love that stuff. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that I've been away for a while, and the reason for that was that I'd been sick, actually. I had COVID I think it started in the first week of April, and it just sort of went on for a while because even my family had it, and we were all quite sick, and now everybody's recovered and doing well, knock on wood, and everybody's really trying to just get back on track, get back to what normal was before COVID. So yeah, it's been a really stressful 3 weeks for me personally, because it's strange because we've been living with this disease for a year now, right? And it's been frustrating for a long time. It had been frustrating for a long time. It had been sort of normal for a while too. You kind of, again, got into the routine of it. You made peace with it probably. Some actually start to enjoy it as well. Just the feeling of being at home all the time and really just cutting down your time outside in that sense, not the disease. But yeah, I think a lot of people also got normal or had come to accept the fact that, okay, this virus is going to be there for a while and you just have to make do with what you have right now, today, and you sort of just go on living life. And I think I was one of those people. I had like gone through the entire phase, all the phases of, frustration at first, to anger, to resentment, and sadness as well, just feeling this overwhelming feeling of sadness. And then I came to being sort of accepting of it. And then I learned to embrace it as well. But the fear had always been there. The fear that, I could catch it. And it mostly wasn't, the fear wasn't that I would catch it. It was that someone in my family would get it. And, you don't even want to imagine the possibility of that. But that was the biggest fear for a while. And I especially was very frantic about it. As someone who's dealt with, periods of anxiety for a while now, I think everything is sort of heightened. If you have something that you very obviously cannot control, and you have really no control over it whatsoever. It has a mind of its own. You can't plan for it. You can't figure out a routine for it. You can prepare, but you can't really be sure. There's no guarantees for anything. That sort of gets to us. I want to call myself a recovering control freak, but I'm not sure about the recovering part of it. Yeah, so everything sort of becomes heightened, and I became heightened, and I would be very frantic about, washing your hands and social distancing and just not having that disease anywhere near us until it happened. And obviously you didn't prepare for it. You don't know what to do when it happens. I think that's probably just life in general, right? All the big moments you don't really prepare for. All the big things that happen, the things that sort of change you, the things that move your life in a different direction, the things that bring you the greatest revelations that you would ever have. You don't plan for any of it, and you don't prepare for any of it, and honestly, when they happen, you don't know what to do. But that's the thing, you just sort of move. Life is about moving. You move through the mess, you move through the pain, you move through grief, you move through joy, you move through boundaries even, and then you even move through universes probably when you die. You move from your reality to another reality. So life is about moving. Life is also about becoming something, becoming someone, and also just knowing what you want to do with your life, which is the biggest question. But yeah, so when it happened, it was very obvious that you just had to deal with it. There is nothing else to do. You have to deal with it. So I dealt with it. I dealt with it the best way I could. I tried to keep calm. I tried to do everything that I usually do, which is read and write, even though I couldn't because it was just too straining. To write, to use hands. It was too straining to get out of bed, but me being me, I sort of tried to push a little bit, always trying to push one step further, trying to see if I have what it takes to deal with things and deal with whatever lies ahead. But, in retrospect, now I understand that I could have probably just stayed still and not tried to push, and that would have been absolutely fine as well. So yeah, I think with all the stress, with all the physical pain, I am now totally okay, and doing much better. And so is everyone else. So that's a good thing. Yeah. So that was, about a little bit about what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks, which was mostly nothing. I tried to read this book. In fact, I was reading it before COVID happened, and I sort of really wanted to complete it, and just get an episode out of it, but didn't really work out that way. So this book is Hellfire by Lisa Ghazi, and I remember the first day that I was down with fever, I was reading this book and just trying to keep my mind off of other things. And that's my cat. And there was this moment where I got so frustrated. And the thing is, the book in itself is obviously not a bad book or anything. It's great, and it's one of the only pieces of literature that I've read from the from the neighboring countries, from our neighboring countries, right? And Hellfire is about these two sisters who are Lovely and her sister Beauty, and they're sort of locked up in their home because of their mother. Their mother, Farida Khanum, doesn't allow them to go outside, doesn't allow them to have friends, has sort of just molded their entire lives within the confines of their home. So that is all that these girls are used to, that is all that these girls know, and they don't even attempt to cross that border. And that sort of would have been okay, or you could have probably made sense of that if these girls were really young. But that's the thing. The girls are actually 40 years old and young, and a little bit younger than that. So they're really, they've lived their whole lives that way. And the whole story, the whole book kind of revolves around Lovely's birthday. And just the events of the entire day, which involve, her going out of the house on her own for the first time, and just the things that unfold. So that's honestly all the book is about. It's just the events of one day and everything that led up to it, and obviously everything that happens afterward. It's an interesting book for a lot of reasons. It's extremely simple prose, probably because it's been translated. And I picked it up really for no particular reason except that the story just seemed very interesting. And I really wanted to read more Bengali literature. But I sort of couldn't connect to it a lot. I was struggling to connect to the words and the way that it was written and the way that the sentences form themselves. And as you know, that is something that is very important to me, to be able to appreciate beauty in the words and to find some sort of rhythm to the words, to find some sort of poetry in the words. And I just couldn't find that. And I think that could be because of translation. Probably something got lost there. But the book is also really pacey, so I think the focus was more about the plot and how do you take the plot forward. So I don't think the focus was ever on the words as such. It was more about the characters and what happens to them. Anyway, so I sort of was getting to a point where I was getting a little bit icky about the book, and I didn't really feel very connected to it. And the day that I had my first fever, I was just very, I was very concerned about a lot of things, and I was very distracted. And then I sat down, like I was just sleeping, and I picked up the book, and I knew I wanted to finish it. I knew I wanted to just get out of the fever and get out of that, phase of being physically confined to the bed. Even though I knew that rest was important and all of that, I just wanted to get out of it and get on with other things and being healthy. But then that wasn't happening, and I was reading the book and I was just getting so frustrated about it that I couldn't do it. I couldn't finish it. And I'm literally like, I'm more than halfway through and I just couldn't finish it. And I just left it. And I felt very, very guilty about it until, I just sat with myself and I said, it's fine. You can let this go. It's okay. You're sick. You don't have to finish a book that you don't particularly like too much. So yeah, that was my journey with Hellfire, which I left more than halfway through. But I do think I'm going to go back to it because I still like the story and I like where it was going. Probably when I'm in a more saner state of mind, but not right now. But I would recommend it if you are someone who's sort of looking for some easy breezy writing and you're looking for a good, interesting story, something out of the ordinary, something related to family dynamics and all of that stuff, get the book. It is interesting and I think you would like it. Moving on to just the book that I picked up after that, and the book that I'm actually currently reading. Even though, we usually do episodes after I finished a book and all of that, but I don't know why I feel like maybe we should be doing something different this time. And this is the only book that I've finished over 3 weeks, and it's that I haven't finished, but this is the only book that I've been reading. And I picked it up like last week. I think Saturday maybe. And I'm still quite slow with it, but I'm getting there. And it's a really interesting book and something that I'd seen on my shelf for a very long time, but I hadn't really picked up because, I had this thing where I didn't want to read autobiographies. And I'll tell you why. But the book that I'm talking about is Michelle Obama's memoir, which is Becoming. And the reason why I have strayed away from autobiographies for the longest time, even though autobiographies were the first real books that I'd actually read. I mean, I read The Diary of Anne Frank. I think I'd read maybe 2-3 other autobiographies of people that I can't remember. Helen Keller was one of them. The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. That was another one. I had read something else as well, but I can't remember it right now. So even though I'd read autobiographies in the beginning and I really liked them, I remember I stopped. I stopped at one point, and after that I haven't read autobiographies since. It's been years that I read an autobiography, and the reason is I had enrolled for a course once. I was probably 13 at this point, 13 or 14. I had enrolled for a course, and it was my first day there, and I was quite excited about it, and it was very intimidating. I was surrounded by people I didn't know, and they seemed intimidating, but every time I enter a room, I think the first thing that strikes me, and the thing that makes me the most intimidated is the thought that everybody else in that room is smarter than me. I don't know why that is. I've had it for a very long time, and I only very recently realized that when I enter a room of people I don't know, that's the first thing that enters my mind. That's the first thought that I have. And I feel like I almost mold my behavior or shape my behavior according to how I answer that question. So if I answer that question, the question of, is everyone else in this room smarter than me? If the answer to that question is yes, then my personality just becomes more timid and it becomes more quiet and shy probably, and all of that stuff. But if the answer to that question is no, then it becomes who I honestly really am, like who I actually am. It becomes me. I sort of open up. But I know that is a very weird thing probably. I don't know if any of you have it. If you do, let me know, because I would like to know. But yeah, that's the first thought that I get. And even that day, as I entered that room, as I was sitting for the first class of that course, I had that same thought. And I'm pretty sure I answered it as yes, which is how I usually do. But I remember the professor had come in, the teacher had come in, and she had a very interesting voice. She had a very bold voice, the kind of voice that really, just travels from one end to the other of the room. It bounces off of walls and you sit with that voice. It reaches somewhere inside you that you don't even understand. It's that kind of voice. And she had this sort of personality, she had this sort of aura around her, with the way she walked, with the way she picked up that chalk, with the way she wrote on the board, with the way she communicated, with her gestures, and just everything, honestly. It was very, very intimidating right off the bat. And I was fascinated from the get-go. I was extremely fascinated by her, and I really wanted to know who she was, and I was also scared of her. And the first question she asked was, what kind of books do you read? She asked the question to the entire room. And because she was so intimidating, nobody answered. Nobody had raised their hand to answer. And I did. And she asked me that question, and I said something. I think I murmured it almost, so she didn't hear, and she was like, speak louder. And I said, autobiographies. I usually read autobiographies. I really like them. And she had said something like, you need to move beyond it. There's an array of books that you should be reading instead of autobiographies. It's not really literature or something like that. And I think that thought stayed with me, and it just shaped how I perceive things for the longest time. And I really feel that's the reason why I never picked up another autobiography, because I felt like this woman who I really looked up to sort of dismissed that. And so I dismissed autobiographies. Anyway, when I came to realize that, I sort of consciously picked up this book and I started reading it. And I was, in like a very not disturbed, but I was in an anxious state of mind, where I'd been a little bit frantic. It was while we were recovering, and I was a little frantic and a little, overwhelmed by just everything that's happening in the country right now, that I had this sort of panic moment. And I knew that I desperately needed something to distract me, but I didn't know what it was. And I just glanced at the book. And I, just before in that evening, I'd been looking for a book to pick up from my shelf, but I just kept, I kept refraining from it. I kept saying, not this one. It's an autobiography. I'll just pick up I'll pick another fiction book to read, whatever. But in that panic moment, I just, from the corner of my eye, I could see that book. And that's the only book that I saw. And I feel like probably that was God speaking to me, because it was perfect timing. I picked that book up, I calmed myself down, I tried to, and I started reading. And then I couldn't stop. And that's the power of this book, I feel. It really was, again, I feel like I've been repeating myself so much, and this thing has kept coming up so many times, but really, I really feel like it was divine order. I really feel like it was God speaking to me, because I was at this slump, you know. I felt like I couldn't really connect to any of these fiction books. I felt like I needed something real in that point of time. You know, I needed to know that with all the uncertainty around us, with all this constant absurdity and chaos that is happening, it is so easy to feel overwhelmed. But I needed something real to hold on to, which is why, you know, I sort of went off social media as well, because it was just getting so overwhelming. And I needed to know that, okay, right now in this moment of time, I am okay, my family is okay, the people I love are doing well, and they're okay. So I just needed to tell myself that, and I needed to, at least in that moment, not be panicked. So for my own, you know, sanity, I sort of switched off social media, sort of switched off that whole zone. I had been only talking to friends and family and all that. And I knew that even with, you know, that kind of traveled in the way that I was perceiving books at the time as well. I just couldn't get myself to read fiction again. I just couldn't. I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed to be lost in another world right now, and I needed all that dramatic, you know, twists and turns. I didn't need that. I needed something real that I could hold on to. I needed to know about real people and about how someone possibly overcame the worst of the odds, you know, and made it through, and someone who was resilient, who worked hard, who had a life that you could probably mirror. So yeah, so I knew that, and I think that's the reason why I possibly gravitated, and I'm still so connected to this book, and I'm not gonna you know, put it down, or, you know, think of it as a side read. I'm just gonna stick with it really, with a lot of dedication, because I know that this is something that is real, and it sort of is anchoring me at this point. And also, I'm extremely obsessed with Michelle Obama. She's just like an incredible, she has an incredible story. I think that most everyone can relate to, especially I really could, because, you know, when she was talking about this entire thing, where she's talking about how even she is this huge, you know, planning geek. You know, she plans everything. She likes lists, and she likes order and routine, and she likes knowing that she has some sort of control over some aspects of her life, because honestly, that's all it is really about. It's about control. You want to establish some sort of control over your life, over the things that might be happening, over circumstances and all of that stuff. So she's trying to explain how that has been such a big part of her life, and such a big, you know, reason why she's made some decisions, why she's studied so hard, or, you know, especially, you know, in one instance, she's talking about how she studied all of her life, right? She was an extremely bright student, and even in subjects where she wasn't just naturally inclined to perform, she put in that extra work to get there, to get to the achievement. So she describes herself as someone who's extremely hardworking, and who's really put her best in everything, and who really likes to see things through, and who likes to complete things and not just leave them halfway and all of that. So she's saying that, and she says that she studied all of her life to get to Harvard, to get to Princeton, to get to law, and to become the lawyer that she eventually does become. And then she realizes that in all of that planning, in all of that ambition, she forgot to sort of sit with herself and ask herself whether that is what she actually wanted to do, whether that brought her real, true joy, and what exactly was it that brought her that joy. And I personally felt like I could really relate with that. I feel like most of the times I get so overwhelmed with just seeing things through. I just want to see things through, and I want to stick with it, and I don't want to just, give it up. And I want to do things right, and I want to do it really, really well. So I realize that sometimes I don't even pick up hobbies or, subjects where I know that I possibly won't do very well. So I just, there's this need to achieve, right? And you don't even ask yourself if that's actually what you really want to achieve. So I thought that was very interesting, and she talks a lot about how that side of her, the side of her that plans, that really wants and craves order, that side of her, and how that sort of just magically gelled with Barack Obama's side of spontaneity, of just picking things up because they interested him and intrigued him, and he wanted to do it because he felt passionate about it at that point in time, and how that equation sort of worked. And it's so interesting to see, and I just felt like I could sort of connect with it, and it really also motivated me to get back to work, to get things done, and really to study well and get all of those things that I really want to achieve all of those things that I want to achieve. So yeah, it's a very interesting book. Till now, I'm halfway through it. I'm gonna be finishing it probably by the weekend. And I'll let you guys know how it goes. I'll let you guys know. And I can't really say too much about the book because I don't know what to say about it. You just sort of, it's a person's story. You have to hear it out on your own. You have to get your own interpretations of it, and you also have to hear the entire thing. You can't really stop listening to someone halfway, right, if they're telling you their story. So this is literally her life. So I don't know, I would really recommend that you read it. Pick it up, and even if it's a side read for you, pick it up. It's gonna inspire you and motivate you to get work done. And if not that, it's just gonna let you in to the mind of someone who's just very interesting, who's very inspirational, who's done a lot, who's worked really hard, and who's really made something of herself. She has a story to tell. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this episode. I hope you liked it. I hope you check out all the books that I've mentioned. And yeah, I'm gonna see you next week. And I really, really hope that you are safe. I hope that you're taking care of yourself and your family and the people that you love. I hope you're able to manage the chaos that's unfolding right now. And, I've just been telling myself that it's a phase and it's a season. Life has seasons, things have seasons. And I know that we will make it through. We will emerge out of this victorious. Resilience is the word that I, use as a motto for life, for living life. And I hope that you can also possibly think about having a word and having that word. So yeah, I hope you are safe. I hope you're doing well, and I hope this episode just sort of takes you away from all of the madness that's unfolding. And I hope you are taking care of yourself. Keep reading, and I will see you next week.